The gun so terrible it would end war. In the 1860s, inventor Richard Gatling built something horrifying. A rapid-fire, hand-cranked death machine that could mow down soldiers like wheat. But somewhat tragically, he wasn't trying to make war worse. Gatling believed that most deaths in the Civil War didn't come from bullets, but from disease. So he had an idea. If one man with a machine gun could replace 100, armies could shrink, battles would end faster, and fewer men would die in trenches or field hospitals. As he wrote in 1877, "If I could invent a machine gun, it would largely supersede the necessity of large armies, and exposure to battle and disease would be greatly diminished." A noble intention. But guess what happened? That's right, my peace-loving hippie friend. War happened, and lots of it. Turns out, the Gatling gun didn't downscale or prevent war. It revolutionized it, because when your opponent multiplies their firepower, you don't disarm. You either multiply your own manpower or you equip your soldiers with their own set of machine guns. Preferably both. Gatling's dream of an end to large-scale conflict turned into a catalyst for gun designs that, when mixed with the logistics of the Industrial Revolution, gave us the recipe for a World War I meat grinder of industrial proportions. Not exactly the end of all war. London will drown in horse manure. In 1894, the Times of London issued a dire warning. Based on current trends, they predicted that within 50 years, every street in London would be buried under 9 feet of horse manure. You wouldn't walk the streets. You'd swim them. At the time, this wasn't some wild exaggeration. It was basic math. London had over 50,000 horses working daily, pulling cabs, buses, carts, and goods of every kind. Each horse dropped 15 to 35 pounds of manure a day. Add in the urine, the rotting horse corpses, and the swarms of disease-carrying flies, and the city really did feel like it was being buried, one pile at a time. Urban planners were panicking, and in 1898, at the first International City Planning Conference in New York, the main agenda was, what do we do about all the poop? No one had an answer. And then, guess what happened? That's right, my industrious friend. The car was invented. It was invented by Carl Benz in 1886, so the solution was already there. It just needed commercialization. By the 1920s, horse-drawn transport was fading fast, replaced by cars, trams, and buses. And by the 1950s, horse populations in the developed world had fallen off a cliff. And 50 years after the prediction was made, it seemed like there was never any issue at all. Sometimes, when you're knee-deep in filth, something completely unexpected saves the day. Man will not fly for 1,000,000 years. On October 9th, 1903, the New York Times weighed in on the future of human flight. They confidently predicted it would take 1 to 10 million years with the combined and continuous efforts of mathematicians and mechanicians before mankind could build a successful flying machine. The message was clear. Give up. Humanity simply wasn't meant to fly. Did the Greeks teach you nothing? Want to guess what happened 69 days later? That's right, my Red Baron wannabe friend. The Wright brothers flew. On December 17th, 1903, at a windy field in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Orville Wright piloted the flyer for 12 seconds. It traveled just 120 feet. And then his brother, Wilbur, took a turn. In total, they took 4 short flights that changed the world forever. The age of aviation had begun. The Times would later become one of aviation's biggest supporters. But the irony remained. Their confident prediction is probably one of the worst ones ever. Just a few years later, planes were being used in warfare and commercial flights. And within 70 years, humanity didn't just cross oceans in flying machines. We used one to leave the planet. Today, at any given moment, between 12 and 14,000 airplanes are in the sky around the world. Not bad for something that was supposed to take 1,000,000 years. Nuclear energy will never be practical. In the early 1930s, scientists were just beginning to unlock the mysteries of the atom. Even the smartest minds on Earth were unsure where it would all lead. Albert Einstein, the man whose equations laid the groundwork for nuclear theory, reportedly said in 1934, "There is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable." And so, guess what happened? That's right, my radioactive friend. We split the atom. By the 1940s, nuclear energy wasn't just obtainable, it was wiping cities off the map. All it took was the combined efforts of some of the most brilliant scientists the world had to offer, coupled with American industrial might. A project egged on by Einstein himself in a letter to Roosevelt in 1939. Then came the commercial nuclear power plants, the nuclear missiles, nuclear submarines, bomb shelters, the Cold War, and nuclear deterrence doctrine. The practicality of nuclear power came to define the entire second half of the century, through energy, fear, and politics. Einstein himself would later say, "Had I known that the Germans would not succeed in developing an atomic bomb, I would have done nothing." He went from skeptic to regretful catalyst, all in the span of a decade. Turns out, splitting the atom was very practical. Maybe a little too practical. The Beatles have no future in show business. In 1962, a scrappy little band from Liverpool walked into Decca's studios in London to audition. They were called the Beatles. After their performance, Decca's executives took a hard look and said, "Guitar groups are on their way out." And so, guess what happened? That's right, my Beatlemaniac friend. They heeded the advice, split up, and never played music again. Nah, just kidding. They found a different studio and went on to become the best-selling band in human history. The Beatles literally defined what rock is. The haircuts, the screaming fans, the conspiracies, the rooftop concerts, and the psychedelic albums. The actual reinvention of modern music. Meanwhile, Decca signed a different group instead, Brian Poole and the Tremolos. Remember them? Yeah, neither does history. So next time someone tells you you're not gonna make it, just remember, a major record label once thought the Beatles were a bad investment. Oops. No one will watch a movie about space. In the late 1970s, 20th Century Fox had a problem. They were about to release a weird, low-budget sci-fi movie with laser swords, space wizards, and a villain in a black helmet. Most executives thought it would flop. One Fox producer reportedly told George Lucas, "No one will watch a movie about space." So, guess what happened? That's right, my Jar Jar Binks-loving friend. Star Wars became one of the most successful franchises of all time. Star Wars premiered in 1977, made over $775 million, and became a cultural supernova. It kick-started the modern blockbuster, redefined movie merchandising, and spawned sequels, prequels, theme parks, and an entire religion. Turns out everybody want to watch movies about space. Today, space movies are a billion-dollar genre. Interstellar, Gravity, The Martian, Avatar, Dune, Guardians of the Galaxy. And yes, still Star Wars, albeit less enthusiastically. The idea that no one would watch a movie about space might be one of the most ironically bad predictions in film history. Titanic is unsinkable. In 1912, the RMS Titanic was hailed as the crown jewel of modern engineering, the largest ship ever built, packed with the latest safety features, watertight compartments, advanced pumps, wireless telegraphs. It was called Unsinkable, both in brochures and in press coverage. Captain Edward Smith is famously said to have declared, "I cannot conceive of any vital disaster happening to this vessel. Modern shipbuilding has gone beyond that." So, guess what happened? That's right, my seaworthy friend. It sank. On its very first voyage, the Titanic struck an iceberg on April 14, 1912, and within 3 hours, it broke apart and sank into the North Atlantic. Despite the new safety features, there were not enough lifeboats to cover all passengers. Over 1,500 people died, including Captain Smith. Turns out, nature doesn't care how modern your ship is. The internet will be no more important than the fax machine. In 1998, economist and future Nobel Prize winner Paul Krugman confidently predicted the future of the internet. His take? By 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. Oof. I think you know the drill by now. But, guess what happened? That's right, my terminally online friend. The 21st century happened. By 2005, the internet had already transformed shopping, banking, dating, music, communication, and global finance. Amazon, Google, eBay, PayPal, Wikipedia, YouTube. And that was before smartphones, social media, or streaming. Far from being a footnote like the fax machine, which a lot of the younger viewers probably won't even know what is, the internet became the nervous system of modern civilization, so deeply embedded in how we live, work, and trade that its economic impact isn't even measurable in traditional terms. Thankfully, it's here, allowing you to watch this video. Thanks for that. Do you feel like there are some bad predictions that I missed? Feel free to let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Cheers.